All reasonable questions answered. So here are some reasonable questions, at least supposedly, from SJWs to anti-SJWs. Let's check them out.
Are you able to understand the irony of responding to the perceived political correctness of the left with exasperated reactionary hypersensitivity of your own?
Wow. So calling you out on your bullshit and being indignant at your dishonesty and hypocrisy is exasperated hypersensitivity? I gotta say, not a good start on the reasonable angle here. Sounds more like have you stopped beating your wife kind of questions.
What is it with you people and skulls?
Skulls? I like skulls. I have one of my own. I don't leave home without it. What an odd question.
How do you define right-wing?
Corporatist in economic issues and authoritarian in social issues.
Anti-SJWs often have an aversion to being labelled as right-wing.
Because I'm not right-wing, I'm a libertarian.
Yet they regularly defend the right and bash the left.
No, I bash the right a lot too. Just check out my podcast archives at podcast.bogosity.tv or look through my YouTube channel. The left gets bashed a lot lately because they happen to be the ones enjoying the bulk of the political power at the moment.
Why is being labelled right-wing a bad thing to you?
Because I'm not right-wing! I'm a libertarian! Libertarians are as far from the right wing as we are from you. And it's a bad thing because it exposes your cultist mentality. Us versus them. The we and the not we. You're the we, and everyone who disagrees with you, the not we, gets lumped into right wing.
And if it's because right-wing is used as a pejorative, can you not see how labelling people as SJWs or regressives is also pejorative?
No, because you are SJWs and you are regressive. Really, I'm having a hard time telling the difference between you people and the moral majority that was a big political force when I grew up. It's like, now the right are largely pro-free speech, and the left are all moralistic and puritanical. And I'm left feeling like I'm in the Twilight Zone or something.
Wouldn't it be more productive for you to have an actual conversation about the issues you feel matter?
That's what I'm trying to do! For crying out loud, I have a whole series just begging people to try and come up with rational defenses for their political bogosity. Instead of making bullshit videos like this, where every question contains an assumption about the negative character of your opponents, why don't you try responding in kind and furthering the conversation?
You claim to be proponents of rational, logical, evidence-based argumentation. That's great. That's entirely laudable. But when I look at your online activity, when I look at, I don't know, for example, your Twitter feed, that's often not what I see.
Because these are complex issues that can't be boiled down to 140 characters or less. That's why we make videos about them that are 20 minutes long or even longer in the hopes that you'll listen and respond in kind. You know, the whole furthering the conversation again. It seems to us like you live in a soundbite world, and that's just not how things are in reality.
No, seriously? What is it with you people and skulls?
All skull-related questions will be ignored from this point on.
Are you aware that the ridiculous buzzwords you helped to popularize, like SJW and cuck and regressive, have all lost whatever meaning they once had and only serve now as catch-all insults and pejoratives to derail any meaningful conversation?
No, you're completely wrong, because at least in a couple of cases like regressives, they have a meaning, and it's an important meaning that needs to be pointed out. Real feminists, like the second-wave feminists I grew up admiring, the women's lib feminists, were all about empowering women, and women can do anything men can if men will just get out of their way. You're completely undoing all of that. You're hurting your own cause, and we call you regressives as a way of pointing this out, so that other people listening in won't be taken in by what you say. And hey, you want to talk about buzzwords? What about patriarchy, or rape culture, or mansplaining?
In videos and in the comment sections, anti-feminists often take up the most extreme, or the weakest feminist position they can find, or they just straight up misrepresent what the feminist position is. Instead, why not take up the strongest, most robust feminist argument you can find and really challenge yourself?
I did! See my videos, Are You a Good Feminist or a Bad Feminist? I Thought I Was a Feminist, Is It Okay to Laugh at Rape Jokes? And, of course, How to Argue for Feminism. My question for you is, why have none of you given any responses to these? Why don't you want to further the conversation? And for that matter, why do so many feminists and SJWs block people like me before we even get a chance to have a conversation?
I am deeply concerned with male addiction rates, suicide rates, and abuse rates, because I have worked with these issues in the quote-unquote real world. Would you be willing as anti-feminists to put aside your differences with feminists for the greater good of addressing these issues?
Sure, I'm game. What do you think we should do?
What is third wave feminism?
It's this latest movement of feminism that you've jumped into, Steve. First wave feminism was about ending laws that harmed women, like restricting their right to vote. Second wave feminism was all about feminists having an equal standing in society and about being sex positive. Third wave feminism is, in many ways, the exact opposite. It's full of sex negativity and continually about how women are helpless victims and need men and government to take care of them. That's exactly the sort of thing the first two waves were fighting against. You're setting back feminism 200 years! Oh, and they're falling all over themselves to be victims, aren't they?
Ooh, he said something nasty to me on Twitter. That means he raped me.
Or even,
he gave me a compliment. He raped me.
Or, really ironic,
Sargon said he wouldn't even rape me. He raped me.
Always having to play the victim card. Really, calling a second wave feminist a victim was a good way to get a shoe rammed up your butt.
Why is it that this feminist represents all feminists, but this men's rights activist doesn't represent all men's rights activists?
Whoa, wait, sexism all of a sudden?
Because the MRAs joined in on shouting this guy down. They denounced him as readily as anyone else. Come on, it even happens in the video!
They're on your own, ladies.
But feminists jumped up to defend the first one, vociferously. Oh, and she wasn't acting on her own either. She was part of a group that was there specifically to shout down the speakers because they didn't like what they had to say.
Why am I continually asked to answer for the views of feminists if I agree with feminism's overall aims, but don't agree much with those particular feminists?
Because, and this goes to my previous answer, it's important to call people out on your own side. I'm a libertarian, but I've called out other libertarians such as Stefan Molyneux when I think they've gotten something wrong. And many libertarians will vociferously criticize Alex Jones because we don't want people to think that nut bar is in any way representative of who we are.
Does that mean that I can ask you to answer for anybody who labels themselves similarly to you?
Actually, that's what you're doing right now!
If SJWs are bad because they spend too much time whining and don't talk about real problems, then why aren't you talking about those problems?
I am! Wow, making assumptions again just because I'm part of the not we. Maybe you should have a conversation with that previous guy. He seemed a bit more reasonable about this sort of thing.
Why don't you seem as concerned with actual feminist theory in academia as you are with wrecking people for views?
Actually, we are, because we see how feminism is the one doing the wrecking. Free speech is taking a beating on university campuses, the one place it should be sacrosanct, well, aside from absolutely everywhere else ever, and New Wave feminism is one big reason why.
Which second wave feminists in particular do you appreciate?
Ooh, finally, a good question. Nice one, Steve. I admire the entire movement since it was more than just a few prominent individuals, but some of the individuals I admire are Erin Pitsey, Christina Hoff-Sommers, Erica Jong, and Elizabeth Brooke.
You do understand that reading the title of a book or an article or watching the first 15 seconds of a video is not going to give you a deep, nuanced understanding of what that book or article or video is about, right?
Yeah, all questions of this nature are going to get skipped too. Really, people, your video was 14 minutes long. It's not like you needed a pad.
I see things like raghead or camel fucker or other things like that in your comment sections.
Look, if you have a problem with what someone posts in the comments, deal with that individual in the comments. We are all individuals. And this is the thing that you don't seem to get. You all seem to be joiners. You have feminists on one side and the right wing on the other. There doesn't seem to be any room in your minds for individualism on either side. And that's a big problem. By the way, anyone who pulls that on my channel, they get blocked. So enough of the supercilious pontificating.
Why is trying and failing to debunk a study into sexual assault the #1 priority for a rational thinker now?
Wah! The bad man debunked my lies!
Hello! We're skeptics! We debunk everything! It's what we do. Creationism, the moon landing hoax, anti-vaccination, and your crap too. Why do you think you should get a special break? And what do you mean failed? You have one bad study after another, like the 1 in 5 women on campus being raped figure that you cling to no matter how many times it's been successfully debunked. Yeah, nice job sticking the word failed in there. That just tells us you've made yourself completely immune to any criticism.
Do you deny that systemic racism against black people is like a thing?
Again, I'm just going to refer people to my video on racism and its sources in this country.
What? Okay, just step up. Just cover your ears for a second and let the smart people talk.
Really?
If you've ever discussed or done a video about black on black crime, when are you going to do a video about white on white crime?
Look, I don't care about skin color. I'll cover white on white, black on black, or plaid on polka dotted. Doesn't matter. We libertarians were here way before Black Lives Matter. And we were complaining about it regardless of the person's skin color, Eric Garner as well as Kelly Thomas. So, my question for you is, why is it that you seem so selective only looking at white on black crime? Isn't that a kind of racism? The Netflix series Luke Cage is actually coming under fire from Black Lives Matter because its hero, who is black, is trying to stop black on black crime. So why don't you ask your fellow SJWs about that, huh? Black Lives Matter, except when killed by another black guy? Do you really not see why we have a problem here?
Wherever did you get the idea that racism was a self-applied identity?
I didn't. I've never even heard anyone say that. And I'm subscribed to people like Teal Deer, Armored Skeptic, and Sargon of Akkad.
If the only true racists are the racists who self-identify as racists, how can we ever expect to make any social progress to reduce racism?
One big problem here is the anti-discrimination laws. Used to be if a cafe owner was stupid enough to not want to serve black people, he'd post that. Now, he's not allowed to. His racism is underground, closeted, so we have no way of knowing that. It's not just about the rights of black people, it should also be about my right to not give my money to a racist asshole. But now, I'm not able to do that. And I know what the response is going to be. Well, what if that's the only cafe in town? Well, if it is, let me know and I'll open one across the street and get all his business. See, us capitalists call that a business opportunity.
Or did I just answer my own question?
No, I'm pretty sure I just answered it. How about we stick to the questions and leave the gotchas, okay, Steve?
You often say that you are for equality of opportunity.
Actually, I don't. I'm for impartiality. I have a quickie explaining the difference. I just think that's a better way of looking at the issue.
Isn't it offensive to men to assume that a man could only ever want equality for women, and therefore be comfortable with feminism as a whole in order to get laid?
Look, we all want equality for women. Knock it off. Yeah, all questions like this are getting skipped too. I thought these were supposed to be reasonable.
Like, do you really not get why saying all lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter is not only racially insensitive, but just patently ridiculous?
Wow. Okay, again, basic logic, I don't know how many times this needs to be said. Black lives are a subset of all lives. All lives matter includes Black Lives Matter. The part that it doesn't allow is exclusivity. Only Black Lives Matter, as represented by the Black Lives Matter protesters who call for dead cops, for example. So when you actually complain about the phrase all lives matter, don't be surprised if we put you in the second category.
If you say you're an egalitarian,
I don't.
Will you call out the man-hating slurs that you see coming from people within your community? People who use terms like cuck?
Already have.
What is the number of followers, the number of likes, the number of dislikes, the number of retweets, the number of subscribers, any of those numbers, any of those metrics? What have they got to do with the argument?
Nothing. I don't care the first thing about those. Hey, why don't you ask people on your own side that question? Because of all the videos I've done, including many I've referenced here, the one excuse I get over and over from people on your side is that I'm just a little nobody YouTuber with too few subscribers so they don't have to respond. You know that bit about removing the plank from your own eye before removing the speck from your neighbor's? Yeah, might want to consider that. By the way, this one video of yours got more views in 5 days than my entire channel did in a month. So if the purpose of this question is to make you look like the underdogs, don't even start.
Why is it that you go on and fucking on about safe spaces?
Because of a little thing called segregation. Remember when progressives thought that was a bad thing? Oh, wait, it was progressives who passed a lot of the Jim Crow laws to begin with. Sorry, forgot about that.
And trigger warnings.
Because of a little thing called freedom of speech. Heard of it?
But continue to hide behind your cartoon avatars and your childish pseudonyms.
Excuse me? This is me, Shane Killian, my real name. Good to meet ya. And we'll leave aside the fact that some people in this very video were hiding behind cartoon avatars. Ooh, awkward. But so what if someone wants to be anonymous? How does that affect their arguments? And considering what people on your side have tried to do to people like Thunderfoot, can you really blame them? There's a little thing called the right to privacy too, you know.
Are you willing to publicly acknowledge and admonish the massive amount of hatred, bullying, harassment, and intimidation that a lot of your fans infringe upon people?
No, and I'll tell you why. This is nothing about you, and this is nothing special or unique. I was on the internet before it was called the internet. This has always been the case. It's just how people are. You really think you're the only ones who get death threats? You don't want to see the death threats I've gotten. I've seen some of the ones you claim are death threats. I get worse than that automatically sent to my junk folder.
Why do you find it so hard to believe that feminists are being harassed online?
I don't. I find it hard to believe that this is unique to feminists. You are not getting special treatment online. You're getting treated exactly the way everyone else who expresses a political opinion gets treated. And isn't getting treated equally what you say you want?
Why do you want to quash academic freedom?
Excuse me? Excuse the fuck out of me? Who is the one quashing academic freedom? It's not us, it's new wave feminists, restricting who can speak on campuses, punishing students for speaking, or even reading about unpopular opinions. It's ridiculous legislation like Title IX. You need to open your eyes to what's going on. There's an excellent group called FIRE, the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education. They keep track of this, and they work to stop it. Check them out and learn about what's actually going on. Or just ignore them and call them right-wing. Your choice.
Why are you so obsessed with Anita Sarkeesian?
Gotta love the weasel word obsessed there. But the reason why we're so concerned with Sarkeesian is because she's a liar trying to censor free speech. Are you saying we shouldn't be against that? Why? Just because she's a woman? Or she professes to be on your side? Part of the we? The sad part is how many of the questions I had to skip for reasons I gave. And these were supposed to be reasonable questions. SJWs, maybe it's time to consider what the word reasonable actually means. Or maybe reasonable in the title is another example of Killian's Law.